Now, this year marks 46 years since the Youth Uprising, yet racial divides, unemployment are still some of the challenges facing young people today. Now, in his address today, President Cyril Ramaphosa says the country needs young people to rally together to confront and overcome the massive challenges facing South Africa. He further called on young people to show ubuntu and kindness towards their peers. So what does the role of young people in social cohesion look like? Let's delve into this further now and speak to diversity trainer Asanda Ngoasheng and Jordan Pieters, a social justice activist. Thank you so much to you both for your time. I'll begin with you, Asanda. We talk about social cohesion, yet at the same time, there was a young person whose video is circulating on social media being assaulted badly by an older white man.
Yeah, I mean, this is the story of South Africa, that we are constantly grappling with racism and constantly grappling with the conflict between the different races in South Africa, because we live in a society that is diverse, but we haven't done the work of helping people understand what does it mean to live in a diverse society, and what does it mean to share this space and this society equally, such that everybody is able to feel like they belong and everybody is able to feel like they have space to be themselves in this country that belongs to all of us.
And Jordan, one looks at this video and also takes a step back and looks at that video that emerged from Stellenbosch, where we saw that white student peeing on a black student's laptop and study material. Asanda talks about the work that we are not willing to put into, social cohesion. Let's talk about what then are we doing to replace that, because it looks like, judging from what some young people are saying, we're putting too much pressure on them to fix this.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. So I guess I will kind of echo what Asanda said, in that the end of apartheid did not mean the undoing of apartheid, right? And so, these apartheid spatial divisions between us, and the social divisions and the economic divisions, did not fall away overnight. So I would say that when we talk about young people, there are two important points. The first is the material conditions that young people find themselves in. So with a 60% unemployment rate, young people are very concerned with survival and surviving. And then secondly, I would also say that young people are not a homogeneous group. The reality is that many young people are disillusioned with the political system. They are uninterested and uninvested in participating. They don't vote, right? And then there are also many young people who are aspirational, or who aspire to, get an education and to, kind of escape from poverty. And so we have to ask ourselves, is it fair as well, to put all this pressure on young people to change our society, when we've seen that so many generations who came before us were unable to do that?
So, Asanda, is it really, a fair ask to call on young people, as I was listening to the president today, to rise up and fight against some of these social ills, as he puts them, and says that it's time that they confront some of the problems that they are facing? Is that a fair ask, according to you?
I don't think it's a fair ask, because the problems that youth are facing are the doing of older people, are the doing of the institutions that older people have built. But what can be asked for is that young people have the power and the possibility to be the generation that ends this division. They are the generation that's growing up. Young people are the generation that's growing up in diversity, with different races, with different genders, with different religions. And so they have the possibility of showing the country what diversity and living in diversity together in harmony can look like. And so while young people can talk to each other, can engage each other, and can have discussions and conversations that lead us forward, they cannot do this alone, because government has to have the policies that are going to back up this kind of work. Government has to fund the institutions that are going to support this work, and government has to ensure that our very curriculum at the schools is actually a curriculum that allows for diversity, that supports diversity, and that teaches young people what it means to live in diversity and what social cohesion is all about in the first place.
Jordan, Asanda talks about the importance of diversity training. There's another form of racism, though, that is not new, but it's seldom spoken about. You experience it in undertones. This is the black and colored communities. This is also between them. What would you say are the underlying causes, according to you, of this?
So I would say that this issue is very old, and we can actually look back at history, starting with slavery, colonialism, apartheid. The divide and conquer tactic was used by the apartheids almost I don't want to give them too much credit, but the expertise and the way that they divided these communities was exceptionally well done. And because it was done over such a long period of time, it is, as Asanda also said, it's going to take various stakeholders to actually change this or to improve it. When you still have schools that are predominantly colored, when you still have schools that are predominantly black, how then can we actually move forward when we still have communities who are a street apart, a colored community on the one end and a black community on the other end, but are unable to live in cohesion? So I would say that it would take a kind of political will from the entirety of society to move us forward. But also I would say that it takes us remembering and preserving our history, because a lot of the narratives that drive this divide is firstly ahistorical, and it's used by people to motivate their sinister intentions. So we need to look back at history, we need to start there, and we need to ensure that we need to break these generational divides and find a way to actually, as Asanda said, live in diversity and actually move forward.
I'll come back to you to get a sense of what going beyond the racial divides looks like, Jordan. But Asanda, she talks about something very important, which is a look back at our history. Are we doing so, though, honestly, or is there a much more sanitized version as we keep on commemorating important dates in our history, almost like watering it down in order for it to be palpable for others? Or are we having an honest look at our history?
We're not having an honest look. Our history education does not even come close to delivering what is required. And so while, slavery, colonialism, apartheid is covered in the curriculum, it all depends on the teacher that is teaching it, and the kind of training that history teachers are getting is not even close to being sufficient for them to be able to handle these issues with care. And the content itself doesn't go deep enough. And so it creates this impression that there were these equal groups of people and there was contestation, as there would be, without this understanding that, Black people in particular were particularly oppressed in a specific way that to this day continues. And I want to touch back on the point around the colored, Black conflict. And a big part of it is because there is this apartheid hierarchy of humanity that placed the white man at the top, then the Indian man, then the colored man, and then the man right at the bottom. And if you look at a community and society like Cape Town, most of the institutions of education, most of the institutions of work, they still replicate this. The boss is the white man, the Indian and the colored are, the deputy bosses or the supervisors, and then the Black people are the people hidden behind in the kitchen or the ones doing the most lowly work. And this is a replication of apartheid hierarchy of humanity. And if we don't have these conversations about this and about the anti-Black, sentiment that many colored communities, not all, but many show, and the level of disjuncture between the understanding of who we are as Black communities or as communities with African lineage, it really is it's depressing to kind of observe when you're sitting, particularly in Cape Town. You'll remember that very recently there was an incident in the community of Parkwood where a Black man was burned to death because there was an accusation that he had kidnapped people. And it turned out that he was actually innocent. And when you look at what's being said on social media, even after people have found out that the guy was innocent, it shows you that deep within colored communities in particular, there is still this belief that Black people are inferior, this belief that Black people deserve pain and deserve, things that happen to them. But I don't, it's sad to me, but I don't necessarily get angry about it because I understand that the history was built to divide and conquer. The history was built so that there isn't unity. And I think what's going to be required is for older generation of activists who were part of UDM and other structures that were multiracial and other structures that brought together these communities of colored and Black people. It's going to take those activists coming together and talking to young people to make sure that we stem this, that we end this at its root, because the root is the lack of knowledge about history and the root is the division of apartheid. And for as long as, people are still in Khayelitsha and colored people are still in Bonteheva and the other places, and there hasn't been much effort by government and other institutions to bring us back together, we're going to continue to have this, and we're going to continue to talk about this, and it's going to continue to be an issue with many other people burning in many other communities, seeing the kind of strife that we saw in Parkwood and other communities.
And Jordan, listening to Asanda, she raises issues of spatial planning, really becoming an impediment to integration. I'm coming back to my question for you, because you speak about you really moving forward, but I've often heard talk of moving beyond racial divides. What does that look like for young people?
So, I would say that we need to then ask, what does it actually mean to move beyond a racial divide? Are we talking about the economic divide? Are we talking about the social divide? Are we talking about the political divides? Because I would say that our society is extremely fractured. And yes, young people, we were born after 1994, born as born frees, and we've kind of been bombarded with this Rainbow Nation propaganda that we are all one, unity. But we hear this messaging, but we don't actually see it in reality. There's a disjuncture between the messaging of non-racialism versus the way we actually live, the way we use transport, the way we are educated or have access to education. So I would say that in terms of us actually living in unity and moving beyond these racial divides, all these other structures around us first need to be broken down before we can actually take that step, because otherwise it will just be insubstantial. Otherwise it would just be more Rainbow Nation propaganda.
All right, let me thank you both for your time and appreciate your insights. That was Asanda Ngoasheng, diversity trainer, and Jordan Pieters, a social justice activist. Thank you so much for your time. Let's then take a quick break.